Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't beat that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 55 years of law enforcement experience. He was a homicide detective and gang unit supervisor with LAPD. He spent time with NDIC, and he was a professor and department chair with Mercyhurst University. Here to talk about, among other things, the life triangle. Please welcome David Grabelski. David, how are we doing?
We're doing fine, Jason, and it's good to talk to you again. It's been a couple of years since we talked. I think it was back in the NDIC and Mercyhurst days that we talked. IALEIA days, too, we talked.
Yeah, well, I just recently had David Jimenez on, and he sent me a picture from Mercyhurst from 20 years ago, and I was like, oh, my goodness. And I'm pretty sure you were there too. So it's amazing when you start thinking about it. It's like, oh yeah, we've known each other for decades, not just a couple of years. Now we've known each other a couple of decades.
I too go back to NDIC days, 1993, when NDIC opened up, and I met him and Dave back then. And over the years, I've worked with him through my time at Mercyhurst and then through IALEIA and at conferences. And I actually talked to him a week or so ago. So he's joining the retirement group.
Yeah. Well, geez, we're all getting up there. So hopefully we just don't turn into dinosaurs and we can still get together and converse and try to help out the next generation.
That's a good idea. I like that.
All right. So let's start with your time at LAPD. Because obviously with your introduction, you've gone coast to coast and spending time in California and spending time in Pennsylvania. So I just want to get your perspective from when you started, and we're talking about starting at LAPD at 1972, just that perspective, and I want to take it from there and get into what you were able to accomplish in your career.
All right, we can start with LA, but let me start like 6 months earlier than 72, when I'm about to graduate from Penn State, bachelor's degree in criminal justice, going to look for a job, so I started putting out my applications on the East Coast, and on the bulletin board was a flyer that says LAPD with a college degree, advanced stand-in or something. I go, well, I've never been on West Coast. My buddy in Fraternity House, we traveled across country. I did the 3 days of testing, and I came back and did the applications around Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut originally, so I did the applications, and then somebody asked me, why would I go to LA? And the answer was simple. On the TV at that time, for those that are old enough, there were two things on the TV. One was the Knapp Commission out of New York City, the Serpico and the indictments and the corruption. And the other one was this TV show called 1 Adam 12. Beaches, bikinis, and beautiful girls and good-looking cops. And I go, LA sounds good. Anyways, I took the test. They offered me a job. I took everything I owned, put it in my Ford Mustang, and headed out west. So in 72, I ended up in Los Angeles.
So how close was the TV to real life?
Actually, back in the 70s, it was. Back in the 70s, it was. And yeah, that's a whole nother story. I got married in 81. So those first 7 years on a job were pretty close to the TV life. Anyway, so I joined them. I did the usual stuff, patrol, went into the jail division, went back to patrol, went to administration, went to advice. 7 years on a job, I took the test, promoted to a sergeant, did 2 years as a sergeant, and realized that you got the uniform side and you got the detective side. And I liked the detective side better. So I got promoted again. That's a different civil service thing. And I went over into the detective side. At the same time I got married, 81, I became a detective and went to the detective side. So that was a quick first 9 years of the job.
So I'm interested because, as you mentioned, you're from Connecticut, went to Penn State.
Yep.
And that transition, I have never been to LA, so I am definitely ignorant, but I know that LA is a large city geographically, plus millions of people. So just take us back to your time. I mean, you're coming from Connecticut and you're coming in to the big city to enforce the law.
Yeah, it was a culture shock. I mean, it was a real culture. I was in a small little town from Connecticut. Penn State's on a mountaintop in Pennsylvania. I went to the academy. It's in Griffith Park, so it's away from the city. It's isolated. And my first assignment was Hollywood. And I took,
Nice.
all right, and then I went to Hollywood Morning Watch, and that's a whole different world after dark in Hollywood back in the early 70s. And I used to joke, I saw things on Hollywood Boulevard that I only read about in abnormal psychology. I mean, the culture there was just eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And
So
then
what
two
did you
years,
call it? The homicide walk? I mean,
Hollywood.
the Hollywood walk? What and then what was the Hollywood after dark?
Yeah, Hollywood had a daytime culture of the tourists,
Oh,
and then you had the Twilight Zone, and then after midnight, there's a whole different culture of people that came out, and that was totally foreign to me. And then step it again, 2 years later, 3 years or 2 years later, a year later, they put me in jail division, and now I'm working in jail division with the drunk ward, the transit ward, and that's a whole different world. And then from there, I ended up in South LA in a minority community. And I'm going through another culture shock because that's a total different environment for me. So an East Coast boy with a college degree and very naive, it was a whole culture shock I had to adapt to. But it was interesting in retrospect. It was interesting times.
yeah. I feel with officers, especially the first couple of years, you're on patrol. A lot of times you're by yourself, and the amount of people that you interact with and just getting to know the community. As you mentioned, a whole different wide array of characters that you ran across in your time. I feel that it's why a lot of police officers usually can talk to just about anybody because they spent so much time talking with such a wide variety of people.
Where I really, and this is where LAPD did a good job. They required that most of us probationers, once we got off probation, go work the jail division. And that's where I really learned to talk to people because I don't have a baton, I don't have a gun, we don't have pepper spray. Now I've got to talk you into the jail. I got to talk to you,
Mm-hmm.
move you around. And that's where I really learned how to talk to folks. I really did. And the other culture that's really changed over the years was my first day at the academy. They lined us up and by military branch stepped forward and everybody left was a college kid stepped back. And in my graduating class, there were only 6 of us that did not have military experience. And so that everyone else had gone through the military and a lot of Vietnam vets. And we were looked at, you were the college boys. We were the smart ones. All right. But we weren't very smart streetwise and life-wise. And that was a culture change too for the environment that I went to work in.
I've talked to a lot of analysts. I've talked to a lot of people now through this show. And one of the things I am seeing, or at least I'm paying more attention to, is the idea of success coming through good judgment. So I think back at your time and all the various steps that you just went through your first 10 years at LAPD. And obviously you built the reputation enough that you have sound judgment, like you can make the right call at the right time. Because I mean, if just education itself can only get you so far. And if you're making decisions that are either breaking rules or making the department look bad, you're not going to get very far. But the fact that you were able to accomplish so much, so many different areas in that first 10 years and probably continued on had to do with the fact that you could make the right decision when it counted. What do you think about that?
I think I was very fortunate. I never had the same position more than a year and a half, 2 years. And then I went and learned, I was in a different environment or a different assignment. Day watch dealing with tourists is different than after midnight dealing with the street crowds that are there. Well, going to jail division was, in retrospect, a real good choice. I learned a lot. And then I learned a lot about people. Okay, I
Mhm.
think I remember one of the first eye openers. It was a standard family dispute. My partner and I went there. He took the husband, I took the wife. We separated them. We
Mhm.
talked them. We calmed them down. We got them back together. And the four of us are talking, trying to come up with a solution. And out of nowhere, the husband took one step forward and punched his wife right in the nose. And down she goes, right in front of my partner and I. And after so we resolved it, and we get in the car, I go, didn't he know we were there? And he had explained to me that it didn't matter that we were there. I mean, there's some people are just going to do when they're emotional, they're just going to do things. So you got to expect the unexpected. I go, and that was an eye opener. And the theme you just brought up is really going to come true in my homicide days because they took me from burglary to juvenile to GTA to robbery to 2 years in sexual assaults before I was prepared enough to go to homicide. So, words of wisdom to young analysts: get a job or an agency or a position where you're going to learn stuff, but you're going to be able to move around every couple of years to learn something different within that agency. And as you move around your first 10 years in your career, pick someplace or be fortunate enough to pick someplace that they'll move you from top CIA and you move from country to country. That's fine. It just broadens you, makes you a better analyst.
Yeah, I think it's so easy. I know when I was in my 20s, I was so impatient. I wanted everything now. I didn't want to baby step it. If things were progressing too slowly for me, I was proactive in trying to speed it up. And now that I have a son, he's 16 going on 17, I'm thinking now is like, you know what, just it doesn't matter. Everything's an opportunity to learn and to interact and to network and just don't necessarily worry about that grand plan per se. Try to take every opportunity that's right directly in front of you.
And don't try to be an expert in one topic too quickly. Okay. Get that broad based knowledge of everything or as much as you can, and then worry about specializing in one topic.
Yeah. So you
So
mentioned that you have something else to add?
well, that was my patrol days, but then I moved on to, I was a sergeant. That was okay. I wasn't real comfortable as a field sergeant, tactically wise.
Mm.
That was not my strength. So when the opportunity came up, I rolled over and I became a detective. And that's what I really enjoyed working for the city.
I find that interesting that you have gravitated towards being a detective over a sergeant, just as you mentioned. Talk a little bit more about why you think being a detective was so much more appealing than being a sergeant.
Sure. I describe it as problem solving. When you're a uniform or you're a sergeant, there's a situation you're confronted with. You can't leave until you solve it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As a detective, you're confronted with a burglary or a robbery. Well, there's no immediacy to it, and I can do it methodically and solve it point by point and get it on paper and make it stick. And there was no emergency that like tactically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the challenge, putting the pieces together, putting the puzzle together. And
More
I had time
methodical.
to do it. Yeah, more methodical. And so that's what I liked about the detective job. Plus, I personally put guys in jail. As a sergeant, you don't put anybody in jail. As a detective, you still put them in jail.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and then you said that you were a detective for various units
Yeah.
before making it to homicide. So again, as you said, you've spent a little bit of time all over and got to experience being a detective in all those different disciplines. I guess is there one that I guess I'll leave it up to you. Is there one that sticks out? Is there one that's like, oh, this was harder than I thought, or maybe this is more interesting than what people think? Is there one of those disciplines that you want to talk about?
I had bounced from table to table by their method. Every 6 months, they rotated new detectives. So I went from burglary to juvenile to
Mm-hmm.
robbery. And I know one thing I noticed was, now this is early 70, late 79, 80, somewhere like that. No, 81, that if there was a sexual assault, if it was a burglary, rape, then the burglary table handled it. If it was a robbery, rape, then robbery handled it. If kidnapping, rape, then it was kidnapping table. And it was just spread out. And there's a big movement in California about rights of assault victims, their rights. So I went to the boss and I says, hey, how about I and another partner, we handle all the sex crimes? And it hadn't been done before. And I go, sure. And then I really enjoyed detective work and investigating sexual assaults. It was also my introduction to analysis. We got a new boss that came in, and he came out one day and says, hey, I got a 3-day class over at SC on a thing called Via and Link. Who wants to go? Well, again, following my own advice, a 3-day class? Sure, I'll take it. So I went over there, and this guy named Gottlieb and Arnsberg showed up. One, I think it was Sheldon showed up. For 3 days with a ruler and colored pencils, we drew these straight lines and these nodes and then these arrowheads and all that stuff. And it was an interesting class, but I'm never going to use this. Okay. But it was analysis. And that turned out to be that book, one of the first books on crime analysis by Gottlieb and Arnberg. So then I
Was it from report to arrest, to last arrest?
Now there's one before that.
Oh, okay. So one before that.
It was one of the original ones. It was the big thick one. So as I go back to sexual assault, and an opening came up in homicide. I was asked to go to homicide, and so I went to homicide. But professionally, I enjoyed sexual assault cases better than homicide. Eventually, it was just more of a challenge. And, in general, a third of the cases were business disputes, boyfriend-girlfriend type disputes. A third of them, there wasn't much to go on, but a third of them were really righteous rapes, traumatized victims. And a rapist is always going to be a serial rapist. No such thing as a one-time rapist. And I really professionally enjoyed putting those guys in jail. But I ended up in homicide because they asked me to go, and started my career in homicide.
So did you ever get to use the knowledge you got from Gottlieb's class?
Yep, and here's the story.
All right.
So I'm in homicide for about 6 months, just left sexual assaults. And you ever walk into a room and it's cold and it's quiet and something big just happened and you just hope it wasn't about you? I walked to the station one day. It's quiet, it's cold. I go, what's going on? And they said, the sexual assault team's got a rape victim from the university down the street. I go, whoa, okay, I'm glad I'm not involved. An hour later, my lieutenant called me in and says, hey, Dave, what? He says, listen, we've had a young lady walked in. She told us that a year ago, she attended a fraternity party. And at the end of it, 3 bedrooms, 4 hours, 25 guys raped her. And she now wants to make a report a year later. I go, did she die, boss? No. I go, well, then I'm homicide. I don't know. He goes, no. You spent 2 years working by that university. You've got the case. I go, holy cow. So we do a big investigation. It's a well-known fraternity house, sons of famous people and all that. Interview 85 people, and I do the report. It's a big 200-page document. And I said, okay, I got to present this to the DA. How am I going to present this to the DA? And I go, oh, wait a minute. I did this thing called a visual investigative chart. I wonder if that would work. So I called the guy that taught the class. I said, here's what I got. And we decided to take the paper, draw the victim statement, center line, and then everybody's statement that admitted to it or acknowledged they had sex with her or came into one of the rooms and saw it. And we ended up with a chart that displayed 12 separate sexual assaults by 15 guys, with another 10 guys, 26 guys seeing some part of it. And I can show the DA in room number 1, here's who assaulted her and who are your witnesses. Room number 2, room number 3. So I got this chart on my wall. I said, there's got to be a prettier way to do it. They actually sent me to Sacramento to the Department of Transportation, where there was a lady up there who had this big desktop. She drew lines for highways and streets, and we used her machine to produce a chart of lines that I wanted. And
So it was
I
off it was a plotter? Was it
yeah,
just
it's like
printed
a
out on a
plotter.
plotter?
Yeah, but this is like 92, 94.
Yeah.
Right? And it was the only machine, LA didn't have a machine like that. And it was a big plotter for me to do my via chart. And we now call it flow charting.
Yeah.
And took that. So that was the first time I used it. I go, wow, I used the class. So that was my introduction to analysis.
Yeah.
And then,
And so for the listener, so this plotter is probably the size of a back end of a car. Like it is that wide, and it's 3 feet wide paper. So how long do you remember how long the printout was?
because we had to break it down into the 3 rooms.
Uh-huh.
So each sheet of paper was about 10 feet long.
Wow.
Okay. And I brought it back. I was able to tape photographs of the people. Okay. I gave it a reference number to their statement and all that stuff. And I was impressed with it. I was impressed with it. So that was the first time I did a flow chart, which would then lead me to later do flow charts when I went to the gang unit. I made my guys, I gave them the class, taught them flow charting and link charting for their investigations in the gang world.
Yeah. So before we get into that, just finish up. What was the outcome of the case with the fraternity and the rape?
Okay, if there's ever been a perfect victim, it was this young lady. Okay, and basically the sum and substance of it was she voluntarily went with the first guy and voluntarily had sex with the first guy.
Mm-hmm.
He rolled off the bed. Somebody different rolled on top of the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there on in, everybody truly believed that it was consensual. Okay. That was their statements. And that was that case. I thought I had a strong case with the first 3 suspects that were involved, because the first guy, the guy that was consensual, came back 2 more times and had sex with her. And the second guy had sex with her twice. So, and she cried and she cried. She couldn't resist. It's the 3rd floor of a house. It was 2:00 in the morning, and she was the perfect victim. So they chose, and it was a year later. It turned out that the school was aware of it. The school did an investigation, and they never reported it to the police. And so it was a year later, and so the DA's office chose not to file any charges against anybody. It was really upsetting. It was really upsetting to me, but that's what it was.
Oh, that's awful. Oh man, that's really, really tough.
So now I carry that into my homicide days. I got a couple more years in homicide, and that's when we started doing some charting. There's a thing called the 4 corners of solving a case. You have to have a crime scene, you have to have evidence, you got to have a suspect, you got to have a victim, and you got to have all those arrows. And they all got to be connected. So I used that concept a lot. I also used flow charting on drive-by shootings. You have a drive-by shooting, and people would think that, okay, we caught the driver, get the 3 other people, and flip them to be, witnesses against the driver or against the shooter. Well, if you do a via chart on it and you show the planning, and that the guy who's in the front seat actually is the one that got the gun, and the other guy in the back seat, it was his car, you might have a conspiracy to commit murder of a rival gang. And now you can go to court with all 4 of them. So I started that in homicide, and I took that over into the gang assignment when I get transferred over to run the gang unit.
This is where more of this visual evidence, telling the story, describing the links, being able to articulate and demonstrate to DAs, to your bosses, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how we can tell the story.
Yeah, you change it from a simple drive-by to a conspiracy to commit murder. That's what you did. And then again, with my gang unit, we started doing things like, let's target this gang. Why? Well, because they're at war with this gang. I go, okay, why? Show me. And so we would then start doing diagrams of events to events and retaliatory events between the gangs. We started putting the people involved in each shooting. We started showing that. So we kind of got a real rough link chart going on gang rivals or gang wars. And we came up with, when we looked at all the gangs, there were a couple of them that I can show the amount of violence between two gangs, need more resources, and targeting these two. So again, now I'm doing my link stuff with the gangs.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you talk about this because it sounds like when you were leaving Gottlieb's class, you really weren't sure that you would ever use that information, and it really seems like it took your career in a whole other direction.
Well, it will. It will. It'll take it to, I think, 1992. We've got a little thing called the LA riots, the 92 riots. But prior to that, we were focusing on one team or one gang, and I had the guys run rap sheets, and then we plotted every city that they were arrested in for dope dealing. And all of a sudden, we can see this one gang go right up I-95 and where they got arrested, and they ended up in Northern California. Okay. And so that was an interesting chart. But now it's the 92 riots hit, we get soldiers from Fort Orr come down to protect us because we're in a separate building. And I got these soldiers and I let them in my office and they happen to see this chart. And one of them says, see this guy? Yeah, he hangs out at the bar off base. I go, whoa, okay. Now we're taking this in a different way. Let's get these guys out of here, take this down, because that's going to open up a whole different world. And all of this, we didn't have I2, we didn't have charting tools. This is all done by hand.
Right, yeah, it's poster on the wall.
All right, so, but it's going to lead me into the next phase of it. It's also going to lead me to a thing called failure of intelligence, because we had the riots, and the question afterwards is, why was LAPD not prepared for the riots afterwards? And of course, they looked at us. I mean, the riots were started by gangs. The 7-4 Hoover started that. Football Williams started that at Florence and Normandy. And we had talked to them. And so we had sent messages up the chain about it, and they were all ignored. So it was my first gut failure of intelligence feeling that I had that bothered me. And
Well,
it's also taken me forward too.
So, but I guess in that situation, though, what more could you have done? It was something that you did put it up the chain of command and nothing was done about it.
Well, 40 years later, okay, we have January 6th, and the government report on that says it wasn't a failure of intelligence, it was a failure to communicate to decision makers to act on. So same thing with 92. We sent the information up the chain. They didn't believe it, and they failed to act on it.
Yeah.
So, you talk about a cycle coming back around and biting you in the butt.
What do you wish you would have done differently, knowing what you know now during that 92?
Well, again, in 92, the attitude was analysis and intelligence was not well known. It wasn't accepted. Our intel unit was a couple of officers who were light duty who did the index cards and kept track of it and wrote a weekly thing. That was our idea of intelligence. So I'm not sure I could have done more at the time as that environment. Today, I think there would have been a different response. I know there'd be a different response. I think today law enforcement's more in tune to I mean, we've gone through the phase of intelligence-led policing and CompStat and all that stuff. And so we've come a long, long way, but it still boils down to upper management accepting the role of the analyst. And we have to do a better job of convincing their bosses. Well, yeah. I think I'm not in the field anymore, so I'm not sure what's out there.
I definitely could spend some more time here, but I do want to move on to NDIC, and I want to get to the decision. So you're 21 years at LAPD, and you make the decision to leave, to go to NDIC. So I always like to talk about the decision to leave, to take a change in direction career-wise. So just take us through the thought process of leaving LAPD.
Sure. I make the decision to retire for a couple of reasons. One, LAPD was going to go through a change. We're under a microscope, so I knew the whole department was going to change. I'm from Connecticut originally. I met my wife in California. She's from Boston. We had 10 and 8-year-old kids, And I had to decide, am I going to stay with LAPD another 10, 20, 15 years? Or are we going to pull the plug and go back east? We decided we're going to go back east. All right. So we made that decision first.
Mm-hmm.
Along comes the post-riot task force. And here comes the Bureau. The FBI comes in. They said, okay, we're here to solve your gang problem. Give us all your files. No, I'm not going to give you my files. Give us all your files. Why? Because we got a computer where we put all your gang stuff in there and solve your gang problem. I go, no. I get overruled. They come in, they take all my files. I wait for results, no results. I get mad. I walked in their office one day. All my boxes are spread on the floor by a Xerox machine. And I go, where's the computer? They go, well, we don't have it yet. I got mad. I got really mad. Went back to the office, started writing emails or notes. The FBI calls me up and says, okay, don't stop, Dave. We hired a company out of Newport and we gave them all your data and they're going to do the analysis for you. I went ballistic. I said, I don't trust you guys. And now you give myself to a private company. I'm really upset. So a month later, this private company shows up and they give a dog and pony show. And they're on a computer, on a screen. They're showing link charts between gang members and link charts between people and events. And they're showing timelines and they're pulling up data and they're doing searches. I'm going, wow, that's impressive. And at one point in time, I go, yeah, but it's wrong. He, what do you mean it's wrong? And he showed me the source. I go, oh, yeah, I didn't give you the real stuff. Okay. All right. And he looked at me funny. And now this is the president of the company. As he's walking out, he says, are there any other questions? I go, yeah. Are you hiring? And he goes, well, not here. We're hiring back in a place called Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I go, that's my hometown. He goes, really? I go, no, but I went Penn State. He says, you retiring? I go, yeah. 2 weeks later, I'm wined and dined. 2 weeks after that, they send me to Washington, D.C. The guy in D.C. takes me up to Johnstown. I meet the people up there. 4 weeks later, they offer me a contract, and I get hired by Orion Scientific to go to Johnstown to be their gang expert and to teach their analytical software. So now I went from butcher paper, to their software that I've got to learn. All right. And so I end up at NDIC teaching analysis and their software. And so now I'm at NDIC teaching. So that was the transition.
So obviously, I mean, you have a whole teaching career. So teaching, were you naturally a good instructor, do you feel, or was that something that really took time to hone in your skills?
When I graduated the academy, I said I would love to go back to the academy and teach.
Huh.
Okay. And at one time I got it. I was interviewed to take a teaching spot at the academy, but I did not look like a poster boy LAPD officer in uniform. Okay. I've always had a Pillsbury doughboy figure shape, and so I was not a poster boy there. So I always wanted to teach. I liked teaching, and I just fell into teaching at NDIC. And when we lost the contract, I then rolled over and worked for NDIC, and I was in the training, and they sent me around the country teaching analysis. And then we had a tool called RAID. It was a document exploitation tool. And I spent 12 years with NDIC teaching.
Yeah. There's this aspect of teaching, something which all the various points on all your career, you easily teach that. But you're actually teaching the computer part to this. So that's even brand new to you. So it's not like it sounds like they're not even asking you to teach something that you're well versed in. It's like, oh, by the way, we want you to teach and you have to learn this software.
Absolutely. Now, again, this is 93, 94. The internet was just starting. This open source stuff was just brand new. And of course, link analysis was brand new to the world of analysis. Mm-hmm. And so, I had to learn the tool, and then I had to learn to teach the tool. And of course, there was no classes designed. So the team that I was on, we had to design the classes. Yeah, it was an interesting beginning.
And so this is NDIC. And so we chatted about this a little bit in the prep call, but I mean, NDIC isn't around anymore. So I guess just for the listeners that may not have any idea what NDIC is, just kind of give a quick overview.
Yeah, back in the early 90s, the government decided that we've got FinCEN. Everyone knows what FinCEN. We had EPIC on the borders. You had the CIA's people doing narcotics, but there was no centralized intel center that would take intel reports on domestic narcotics or illicit drugs nationwide. Nobody did that. DEA did it, FBI did it, but they did it independently. And so the government and Congress decided that here's $40 million. We're going to start it up. Where in DC do we want to put it? And nobody wanted it. It was a DOJ project. Nobody wanted it. So a congressman by the name of John Murtha, who was in charge of military appropriations, said, well, I've got a place in Johnstown, PA, and we'll put it there, and I'll fund it out of the military budget. And so he funded it, and so we were getting paid by the military, but it was a DOJ function, and he kept rotating between the FBI running it or DEA running it, and that's how it ended up in Johnstown. And from there, we struggled to find a mission, first of all, okay? And one day my boss walked in and said, Dave, come here. I go, what? He says, were you a good homicide guy? I go, yeah, that's pretty good. Have a good clearance rate? I go, yeah, pretty high clearance rate. Good. I just accepted 1,500 unsolved homicides from Washington, D.C., and we're going to do the analysis. And we have a year to do it.
Oh,
I go, okay. Why are you talking to me about it? He said, well, you're going to be my gang expert. You're going to be my homicide guy, and it's going to be your tools that we're using. So you're going to be part of this team that puts it together. And sure enough, that's what we did. And it was my liaison. I had to go down there and talk to the homicide guys to give up their files. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we did some good work. We did put out a report, and we found things like a 45 auto by this gang was used against the following gang 5 times. And we think Ghost Dog committed it, and we found Ghost Dog got killed 3 years later. So we did a lot of good stuff on that. So we were looking for a mission at the time, and we ended up doing stuff like that.
So as you're going through this, 'cause I find this fascinating that, I mean, to have 50 homicides on your plate at one time sounds like a lot, let alone 1,500.
15
So, I mean,
unsolved.
and just break it down a little bit. As you're doing the analysis, a lot of this is paper. Are you doing data entry into the tool? Do you have anything that's just electronic data already that you're feeding the tool? Or is this more tool? Is this more good old fashioned police work? What's the breakdown there?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we had to go from scratch. We went down there and we made Xerox copies of their unsolved cases.
Mm-hmm.
About 6 months later, I got pulled aside by a homicide guy. He says, "Of course, you didn't get the original, all that stuff." I figured that, but so we didn't get all the stuff, but we did the basic. So they built this massive access database. We used our tools to extract the data. And then I2, this is where I met Mark Mossop from I2. Met him and his team. They came down and they built an interface between Access and I2. So now I had to learn I2 to teach I2 to these guys. And we got to the point after we data loaded all the stuff. That took 6 months. Then we could sit down and start doing, let's talk about today. Everybody work on weapons. How many times was a 45 used? How many weapons were seized? How many are still out there? So we did an analysis on that. Then we did it on by different gangs involved. And then we tried doing time analysis. Did we have any gang wars going on? And it's just your basic stuff, but we're using crude. I2 wasn't crude, but it was in the beginning stages of I2. And today it's much more sophisticated, I hope.
Oh yeah,
But
no,
it was a full year project that we worked on.
yeah.
Just
So
looking for something to do. All right.
so out of the 1,500, just what? How many were you able to solve, or at least develop new leads? Do you have any of those stats?
Yeah, and I told the team, we're not here to solve anything. And that was a selling point to the detectives. We're not going to solve anything. We're not going to embarrass anybody. We're just going to show you what you don't know. So, for example, this case here, you said Snoopy was the prime guy, and you can't find Snoopy. Well, Snoopy from that rival gang got killed 3 years later, and his name is so and so. And you didn't know, obviously, you didn't know that, or you didn't have an open case on him. The big one, like I said, was that 45 semi-auto that was used in 4 murders of a rival gang by the one particular gang. They weren't aware that they were connected. Okay, and we showed many gang wars and retaliation. So it was the standard analysis, but it was very by hand and it wasn't automated. We obviously didn't have AI, so they find me patterns. Okay. All right. It's just old fashioned work.
Oh man.
So that was exciting.
Were you doing like the OCR where you were scanning documents in and having the computer read the text?
Nope.
You were doing anything like that at that time?
They were OCR'd and we'd open it up and we'd fat finger into Microsoft Access.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was
geez.
interesting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we
The
had
kids these days don't know how easy they have it, right?
And then we did some fun things. That was fun too. But somebody took down a motorcycle gang, and we sent our team down there. We got all their boxes, brought it back up, and there's a whole box full of newspapers. Every month or every couple months they publish a newspaper. So I'm just looking through the newspaper one day, their newspaper, and I see that there's a section traveling brothers. I says, let's just enter all the data from all these traveling ones. And when we did it, all right, we ended up finding 3 guys who traveled to every single chapter internationally and nationally in the last 2 years. Don't know if that's important or not, but when we turned it over to the feds, they go, are you trying to tell us these are 3 important guys? I'm not trying to tell you anything, but these 3 guys traveled to every other chapter and they may be important.
Yeah.
Stuff like that was a fun one based upon their own newspaper stuff to look at a hierarchy. So we did some good stuff there. It became political though, unfortunately, a fight between funding. All right. And I left before they shut down. I think I left in 2005. I think they shut down in 2010, 2011, something like that.
Yeah. Well, you made the joke the other day. It was the only government agency that closed.
Yeah. All right. Well, yes.
Usually they live on forever, right? So, all right. Yeah, because that's where I was going to transition to next then is from NDIC, you become an instructor at Mercyhurst College, and that's where our 2 paths crossed.
And there's a connection there too. So one day I'm sitting at my desk, so I'm in charge of the internship, and 2 interns show up, and they're from a place called Mercyhurst, and they're taking intelligence classes up there. So I talked to them. My daughter was turning 18, and I invited them for dinner. My daughter talked to them, and I had met this guy named Bob Heibel, who came down to NDIC and talked to us. And I'm like, okay. So I was vaguely aware of Mercyhurst. I got a phone call one day, and it's Bob Heibel. And he says, I'm starting up a program, a bachelor's degree program at Mercyhurst. How would you like to give up that 1310 job and come to work for the Sisters of Mercy? I go, okay, I don't think so. He goes, well, think about it. Come on up and visit. I went up and visit. They gave me the dog and pony show. I go, well, that sounds interesting. The government was good enough to give me a year leave of absence for me to go teach up there. So I taught for a year or a semester. I think it's 2 semesters. And then they gave me a job offer. I looked at the job offer salary, and the Sisters of Mercy were great employers, but they took their vow of poverty too seriously. So I had to go home and tell my wife, I go, I'm taking about a 25% pay cut, and we're moving to Erie, PA. And I accepted a job with Mercyhurst, and they wanted me to teach criminal or law enforcement analysis to college kids. They already had the national security people, they had the business people, they had the military people teaching analysis for those sections, but they needed somebody in law enforcement. And I go, Sure, why not? And so then I
Yeah.
transitioned to Mercyhurst.
Yeah. Now, when you're in that grace period where they wined and dined you and even teaching that first semester, was that during the winter? Had you experienced an Erie,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania winter by that point?
Yeah, and Johnstown is also isolated, kind of on a mountaintop and
Yeah.
very cold and isolated. Erie at least had a city around it, okay, with more than one shopping center and movie theaters, but it had Lake Erie and lake effects and a
Oh, yeah.
lot of snow.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. So, yeah, for the listeners that don't know, I mean, it would be nothing to have like a lake effect snowstorm where you get 18 inches, 2 feet of
oh,
snow. It would be nothing. And usually, I think my time with there was in the late 90s. The one year it was well over 100 inches of snow fell
yeah,
in the area.
the average 96, and there was a competition between us and Buffalo and
Yeah.
Cleveland on the
Yeah.
amount of snow we go there.
Yeah.
So again, now the transition again now is
Oh.
LAPD. I taught active detectives. The
Mhm.
government, I had to teach civilian analysts who may or may not have law enforcement experience. But then I went out in the field for 7 years and I taught analysts in the field who were familiar with police work. Then they were hiring a lot of ex-cops to be analysts, and that group of people were really tough to teach because they were cops, and now I got to talk. You're now analyst, all right. And then so I went from that group, and now I'm at the Mercyhurst, and now I got 18-year-old kids, all right, or
Young adults.
college kids,
Yeah.
and all the challenges that go with that level of knowledge. So I had to now change to teaching in an academic world with tests and exams and counseling and guidance. And but that was fun
Mhm.
because we started doing what we called strategic projects. The capstone class, the strategic class of senior year, they would do projects for real decision makers. So the national security kids would do stuff for a national security agency out of DC. The
Mhm.
business kids would do a business project for a local business or some business. And law enforcement, I'd work with various law enforcement agencies and we would do a semester project on a question that they proposed. So these kids got a chance to work on a real life problem in law enforcement, talking to somebody from that agency, and then give a presentation and really prepared them for careers in intelligence. So that was a lot of fun too.
A memory came into my head right now as you were saying that. Did you also have a assignment with your students that was very time sensitive, meaning that like they had to report in like at 2 p.m., you gave them the assignment, and then they only had so many hours to finish the assignment and time was of the essence type of thing. Does that sound familiar? I
Yeah,
remember us talking about that, but maybe I'm mistaken.
no, that was in the communications class, the writing class. And the capstone there was they gave the professor, and the professor that taught that class, we had two of them. He was a reporter and the editor for the local newspaper for 20 plus years.
Hmm.
And and the other professor was retired State Department, lived in 8 embassies all over the world, but he was
Hmm.
a project writer. So they were
Hmm.
both professional writers of things. And the students would give the prof 3 days that they were available to work on a project. And they'd get a phone call and they would say things like, the nuclear reactor in Bulgaria just sprung a leak. What does that mean to their government and how should we respond? And you've got X number of hours, literally 2 hours or 4 hours to be in my office, dressed professionally, and give me a quick synopsis of the situation. Okay. And then you get another 24 hours to come back with a 2-page document on what it means. Something along those lines.
Hmm.
I didn't get involved in that one, but yeah, that one was a tough one, challenging one for the kids.
Yeah.
The one I talked about, the strategic one, that was fun because I think we talked about this earlier. We did one for IALEIA. I think it was for somebody in IALEIA. The question was, what is the likelihood of organized crime getting involved in massage parlors and prostitution in the Pacific Northwest? That was the question, okay? So we spent 8 weeks at it, looked at massage parlors, looked at laws, looked at policies, all that stuff, and gave a presentation. We did one for Canada, Royal Mounted Police, the influence of Asian organized crime and animal parts. And so we looked at what's their animal population, those elk antlers or something, and did a report for them. We did one locally. This was a good one. There was a meth lab task force for the state police. And the question was, I know meth is a problem today. What's the problem a year from now? That's a good question for a police department. So my kids came back and said, black heroin. You go, we haven't seen black heroin outside of Pittsburgh or Philly ever. Exactly. A year later, almost to the date, they arrested some guy with a quarter pound or whatever of black heroin coming out of Buffalo.
Nice.
The guy actually went on the press and acknowledged, and Mercyhurst told us about this a year ago, which made a great thing. So those projects were good. They still do it, I believe. And so if whoever listens to this, if you got a local community college or you got a college out there, a university, use those kids to do projects for you. You know, obviously open source stuff.
I think that's a great piece of advice, and I'm a big advocate of the intern. You mentioned the internship program. I'm a big advocate of internships for college folks, getting your foot in the door that way, and it's just a great opportunity for the young adults and police departments to get together.
It teaches the kids, so one, it teaches them teamwork. You got 5 different personalities working together on a deadline. Okay, teaches them professionalism, working with somebody in the real world. You know, working with adults outside of the faculty members, and it's a fun project. They really want to solve it. And
so, you mentioned the different disciplines that you have. There's the business intelligence side, for instance, at Mercyhurst. When you were teaching there, and you eventually became chair, like, what was the breakdown of students? Was the majority on the business side, or how did the different, in terms of the focus from the students, what did they mainly focus on?
Sure. Well, what we told our students was by the end of their sophomore year, they would have heard about business intel, law enforcement intel, military intel, or national security intel. They would have taken a class on those 4 topics as sophomores. So now they've got to decide, is there one of those areas you would like to concentrate in? Because now we're going to work on your minors. And so if you're going to go national security, we'll get a minor in culture, in anthropology, and a language, okay? If you're going to go minor, or if you're going to want to go the business intel, competitive intel, go take accounting, business classes, okay? Military, go take geography, go take world history, stuff like that. Law enforcement, take sociology, take culture classes. And so, and then the kids would then decide there. Of course, it still came down to who to get a job with.
Yeah.
Just because you concentrated on business, if NSA comes by or FBI comes by and offers you a job, you may want to consider them too.
Yeah.
So it broke along those lines. We got some pushback because we were preparing the kids to go to the real world. Okay, when they took a job interview, they can take if they're going to say federal law enforcement, they can take the serial rapist case or the business of crime case they did for me, or the strategic report they did for Canada, and at the interview show that as a team member I did this, or competitive. And so that was kind of our focus, prepare our. Now again, we started in 2005, which is 4 years after 9/11, and it was the first college or university in the country to offer a bachelor's degree in analysis. I think there's over 30, 40 nowadays. But we were the first, and we had a nice mixture. None of us had PhDs. All right, we're all practitioners, and so we taught it like you're working, okay. And We were fortunate because the kids had to have a minimum of a 3.0. We graduated with 3.5s. So we had some good kids. And I see on LinkedIn, they're deputy chiefs. They're all executives now, middle to upper management nowadays.
So you mentioned pushback. What pushback were you getting?
From the academic world, we
Okay.
weren't teaching theories. I wasn't going to teach the theory of analysis. I was going to teach you how to analyze a series of crimes, okay?
Yeah.
If you want to learn about the theory of crime, go take sociology classes.
Yeah.
Go take criminal justice classes. You can learn that someplace else, okay? Because that's not really relevant to you getting a job, okay? You getting a job.
But and it's interesting, and this gets into more philosophical type thing. You do hear the pushback between academia and the police department or law enforcement. In a way, you would want to go to college so you could find a job. Like that's usually the goal of most students. It's interesting that there seems to be some kind of disconnect between academia, what they want to teach, and the goal of finding a job.
Yeah, but I would also include find an area of the world that you're interested in. You're involved in the environment, you're involved in the world of business, the world of the military, health. What problem, what issue in the world do you want to be in? And they'll find you a degree. It may not be analysis. We brought students in who analysis was not going to help them in whatever field that they wanted. But I can find a niche. If you want to go in environment, I'll get you be an analyst for the Department of Agriculture. Yeah, I'll find you a place for it. So analysis, just to get a job, is not really the right approach to these kids, but it is the goal. Okay,
Yeah.
it's the goal. And we were successful back then, very successful. No longer, I don't know what they're doing today, but I think they're still successful.
Before we move on, two more questions that I want to ask you, and I'll ask them one at a time. The first one is drawing from your time here at Mercyhurst as a professor, as a chair, how do you see the current state of the intelligence program at the college level?
Oh, that's a good question. All right, well.
I have my moments.
Well, let me start off with a disclaimer. I retired in 2017. I did teach for a couple more years online at the graduate level. So I'm kind of removed from it. But I tell you what I saw towards the end of it and what I've a little bit seen today. The big thing is we bragged back in 2005 of being the only college at that time that had a degree in intelligence studies, the only one in the country. And we grew as a unit, we grew and we learned a lot. And we talked to a lot of other colleges and universities who are interested in doing a minor of stuff. And so for a while there, we're the only ones available. And when we have our job fairs, every agency in DC came up to pick on our students. So what I see now is the growth of the program of intelligence studies. It's got a lot of different names. It's got strategic studies or, world something perspectives or something. So there's a lot of different names, but what I do like is that there's probably 40 to 50, maybe more universities out there with a degree in some type of intelligence studies. And I think that's a good thing because one of the critiques that we got, or I got as the chair, was the lack of geographical diversity that my students were being hired from. I mean, my kids came from upper Ohio, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and there was no geographical diversity. So now with 40 or 50 other universities out there, you've got the diversity of perspective, and that's important. You also got access and equality. These HIDAs no longer have to go all the way up to Mercyhurst to get a student. They've got a university, Arizona or whatever, in their area to draw local talent to be hired. And with diversity, you got different landscapes. A student who's going to Florida, the University of Florida, they know about the Caribbean, whereas my students don't know about it. But students in the upper Midwest know about the Great Lakes or the Pacific Northwest. So I like the fact there's a lot of universities out there that have grown to it. The challenge, though, is consistency of and rigor of the training, of the education. I think that's the challenge there is a student that graduates from a university in Florida is it as rigorous as one in Pacific Northwest. And that's the challenge. But that's what I like about the state of intelligence nowadays. I refer back to way back when, 1968, I went to college. I went to Penn State. I was a forestry major. Found out you had to be really smart to be a forestry guy. And I looked for another degree. And it was the first year that LEAP, for you old timers, LEAP and IALEIA was giving funds for a degree in criminal justice. And criminal justice didn't take off till the late 60s. And I jumped on that bandwagon. So it's a similar thing that's going through it now where every university has criminal justice. But back in the 60s, it wasn't. So I like the spread of it.
Yeah, that's been one of the unexpected things about my career is jumping on a profession or a job or an employer. Just like real estate, you can get in early and really get dividends establishing yourself before it gets too popular, and then it's hard to get in. So great, I guess. And then just to follow up with that, my second question then is, where would you like to see the intelligence programs go from here? I
don't know if I was going to answer that question directly, but what I'd like to see within the curriculum is we used to talk about it a lot, the fox versus the hedgehog philosophy. And instead of pure intel analysis and teaching the tools, I'd like to see a student come out of a university knowing a lot of topics. I know we had a big emphasis on minors, all right, and cultural minors. So I like to see skill set being taught, not so much the tools being taught. I mean, every kid wants to do MI2 or, Palantir or something like that. But let's teach the school the skill set and teamwork, definitely teamwork. And let's get practitioners to teach. Let's get somebody who retired from business or law enforcement or national security or the military to teach classes in the curriculum. And I really liked the real world experience. So our strategic class where they taught or did a project for a decision maker, I think that's valuable to the curriculum. Yeah, and I hope that's being done. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think that I know with me coming out of college, I felt, I know how to read and write and take a test, but I don't know really what tangible skills I can market in the job interview. I always felt really intimidated about that. So the fact that you have real world hands-on exercises, I think is very valuable.
Yeah, we had a class just on resume writing, and too often I got a history of what they did. Well, that doesn't tell me what you can do and what you're going to do for me. So what's your skill set? Strong communication skills. Okay. What did you do to prove that? Well, I presented in front of the NRO or whoever. Okay. Well, writing skills. Okay. What did you produce? Show me. Teamwork. I'm not sure students nowadays graduate and they can honestly say, I worked as a team, because that's important in the workplace today. And use of tools, we can teach tools, but you've got to be able to want it and be able to use the skill set, the knowledge to use the tool, not depend on the tool. And with AI coming on board, I have no idea where that's going to take us. I'm excited for it.
It'll definitely help people with troubleshooting the tool. So, all right. No, very good. And you mentioned retirement, so that's where I want to go next, because as we mentioned, we talked in the prep call that you've actually retired twice now. So I want to take it to there, just the decision to retire the first time and then establish your two retirements for the audience.
Well, the first time I decided to retire, it's January. I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. We just got hit with another 3 feet of snow, and they're forecasting the whole month of February it's not going to get above freezing.
Yeah.
I woke up, we had our daughter, she graduated in from a program, and she's out in California with the Air Force. Got a son who's a special ed teacher. He's up in Alaska. And I go, okay, why am I still here? And there's no reason to be. And I had 45, 50 years on. So I started looking for a place to move to or retire to. And I've taught at Glencoe or at Fletzy, and that's just too muggy for me, too humid down there.
Yeah.
So when we weren't going to go to Florida, Tennessee, they still got snow. And so he says, well, where don't I need a snowblower? And Tucson, Arizona looked pretty good, not that far from California. So that's how we ended up in Tucson, Arizona. Just woke up one day and said, I've done enough.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, what I learned in retirement is the first 5 years after retirement, you can't let go. You just can't let go. All right, just feel I guess still keep teaching. So I started teaching on the online course, master's thing, did that for 4 or 5 years. I got involved in IALEIA and the Fiat course and taught for them for about 6 years. Then I got involved in this thing with the University of Arizona with OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Institute of Learning Institute. And that's been exciting. So about 5 years, I went back on the road teaching for Fiat, went to all the conferences, taught online, and right around 5 years, I started getting tired of teaching. I also lost my contact, and in reality, I lost my expertise of what's happening. Okay, Palantir came on, and students are talking about it, and I don't know what that is. And there's things going on with cell towers that I don't know what that is. And so my expertise started going. And then this thing that hopefully we can get to is the triangle of time, health, and wealth kicked in. And that's when I got diagnosed, my first diagnosis. And old homicide guys like me, we talk about the trifecta when it comes to health. Well, I caught it, heart, lungs, and liver. The heart got caught my last couple of years in Erie, and I had the triple bypass. Then I'm out here, and 6 years ago, so about 5 years, so 2, 3 years, I got diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. And I go, well, that's no good. And so I started changing my perspective of doing things because I feel like I had to teach because I still had stuff to offer. And so I started fading away from that, and that got me into the stage that I am in right now. So and it's pretty consistent. You read the literature 5 years after retirement, then your skill sets, your contacts, they're gone, and you have to find something else. And now I'm in my second phase of retirement, which means more medical stuff. Unfortunately, I hit the trifecta, like I said, and 6 months ago, I got diagnosed with lung cancer. So I've done the heart, did the liver, and now I got to do the lung thing. And so teaching takes a different perspective. I can decide what I want to teach or not teach. And so that's where we're at right now. Yeah. It's a good place to be retired. This is what retirement is. I pick and choose what I want to do, when I want to do it. And I'm not afraid to say, nah, I don't want to give a presentation. No, I don't want to teach any more online courses. No, I don't want to teach Fiat anymore. So now I'm retired.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at today.
I can really relate to that, especially that the first retirement, the first 5 years, they warn, oh, really try to stay busy. Don't just become a couch potato. And I relate that to, I remember 2020, obviously the pandemic, we're all on lockdown or a version of it. And they said, oh, make sure that you stay social and do all these, try to have online calls and whatnot. I had a different online call every night, like 5 or 6 nights a week. I was more busy in April of 2020 than I was probably any point in my life. I was just, for some reason, I thought I needed all these extra online calls, do all this extra stuff. And in hindsight, I was like, oh, I did not need to go that far. And so I can relate to that because I can understand that, okay, I'm retired, but I don't want to just quit cold turkey. I want to still remain relevant, remain active. That feeling, I can totally understand that you going through in that first retirement.
And we also feel we still got the same skill set that we want to share, or the same knowledge, the experience, that there's somebody out there that still wants to hear that, that can still benefit. That drove me to stay involved and get involved with this IALEIA group. I became the chapter president. So now it's like being a chair again. I had to make classes. I got to find instructors. I got to get the students in there. And it's back being the chair of the university. Then you're right, COVID hit. And now we got to switch from in person to this Zoom meetings, okay, and Zoom classes. I'm going, whoa, okay, how do we do that? And that was an interesting transition. But let me get back something. I think it's important every analyst, everyone working realizes that as you go through the different stages of your career or in your life, you take three things with you. You take time, you take health, and you take wealth. And when you're in your 20s and you got that first new job, you got all the time in the world to do whatever you want. You got your health, and you can do all kinds of stuff, and your health's okay. But you have no money. I mean, you're an entry-level analyst. You know, you've got no money. Mid-career, you've got a little more money, all right? Hopefully you still got your health, but time, you don't have time because you got your career, so you're working overtime, or you're a boss and you've got take home, or you got family, you got 4-H, you got Little League, you got Boy Scouts, you got Girl Scouts, whatever, and so you got no time. And then when you hit your senior level, you're making a lot of money. You're a senior, but the health starts kicking in. I had my heart attack, and I was 61, 62 years old, and I had my first heart problem. So my health's going, and I started thinking about time and how much time do you have. And now that I'm retired, okay, I'm looking at, I got health problems. I got plenty of money to do whatever I want to do. I don't know how much time I got left. I really do. And now we're talking how many years we got, not decades left. And so that's important and to think about as you're going through it.
Yeah. And
that's where I am right now.
Yeah. And I've, even though I'm not practicing what I preach, I really tried to instill that into my kids. I remember how impatient I was teens and 20s, that I wanted everything now. If I didn't have it now, I was working for it. So goal oriented, and just the opportunity to just live at the moment just escaped me. And I think that's really hard for somebody in their teens and 20s, just knowing where they want to be and not being there, that's your focus. And then once you get older, like you and I, it's to the point where you start, it's a different perspective, and that you have experience and you've accomplished things. And now it's not so much about that goal of climbing that mountain.
That time thing is, and it's funny, when I had my liver thing diagnosed, they told me that this was 6 years ago, and they said the liver's the only organ that heals itself. So I changed lifestyles and the drinking and all that stuff, and eating better and all that. And this past August, I went in for another biopsy. My liver's fine. I went from stage 4 cirrhosis to stage 1 fibrosis. And everyone says, you're not cured, but you've got a regular liver. Oh, that's great. And then a month later, my lung cancer gets diagnosed. I go, son of a gun.
Yeah.
So that time thing is important now.
Yeah. As we wrap up this section, this is great perspective. Is from this point forward for you, given what you just said about the triangle, what do you want to see happen next with you?
With me? Well, at this stage, it's grandkids. It's estate planning, unfortunately. Okay. But it is the freedom to spend my money. And every year, my son and I go salmon fishing in Alaska, and I pay for most of the bill. And this year, my daughter, in a semi-offhanded remark says, "How come you never take me fishing, Dad?" I go, "Okay, what kind of fishing you want to do?" And she says, "I want warm and catch a lot of fish." So I just booked a fishing trip to Venice, Louisiana for redfish. And so now I'm taking her fishing, my son fishing. And then I also just booked a trip to Krakow, Poland to do a history, a culture, and a culinary trip, taking my son there for 10 days.
Nice.
Because I'm Polish, obviously, and
Yeah.
100% Polish. So now that's what I'm doing. I'm scheduling. I like doing schedules and planning.
Yeah.
Teaching no longer affects my day-to-day stuff. Okay, I don't build around teaching anymore.
Yeah. So I don't want to see you get into trouble. So do you got something coming up with you and your wife?
Yeah, grandkids. Now we just finished up with. We invited all the kids came down to Tucson
Mhm.
and spent 10 days down here for Christmas. I
Nice.
rented a VRBO, and the grandkids wanted a swimming pool. So we
Yep.
found a place with a heated pool. They
Yep.
wanted to go fishing, so we went fishing, and we had our Christmas down here. So
Nice.
that was part of it. And we go up to their place every summer. And so my wife and I will take a lot of side trips out of Colorado Springs. So that'll be our summer.
All right, very good. So I wanted to finish up the interview for the listeners that have listened to the show. The Don't Be That Analyst section, the call-in segment, is usually something that the show is earmarked to be something a little silly, a little bit something that you see an analyst do, but they really shouldn't be doing it, and it's lighthearted. But with you, when we're preparing for this interview, you had some Don't Be That Analyst that were more on the serious side. So I didn't want to fill those with the call-in segments. I wanted to actually have a true segment for this interview of a Don't Be That Analyst, but it's more of the seriously don't be this analyst.
Well, that's a great question, and I really want to talk about that because that's a topic that I taught it when I was teaching to get their attention, to tell you how serious this is. My perspective on this career, this field, this profession. Okay, let me boil it down this way, folks. I don't care where you go to work. Okay, some city, some state, some federal agency, doesn't matter where, and it doesn't matter what field you're in. At some point in time in your career, okay, a major event will happen. It may be a terrorist attack, it may be civil unrest, it could be a critical incident. Something's going to happen. There's going to be a major event. And guess what happens after a major event, folks? They do this thing called an after action report. All right. And guess what happened? Guess what is included in that after action report? What was the intelligence prior to it? And guess who gets blamed most of the time? The analyst gets blamed for failure to provide the intelligence. I don't want my name to be in that report for failure to provide the intelligence that could have prevented this or foreseen it. So don't be the analyst that's going to be in that after action report for failure of intelligence. And let me tell you where I'm coming from with that. 1992, I'm running a detective special task force of detectives, South LA, gang territory, and all that. And we got a trial going on, Rodney King trial going on. And my guys are on the field and they're saying, hey, there's a tension in the air, but there's something else going on with the gangs. The Bloods and Crips just threw a barbecue together. And then another set of Bloods and Crips got together. And my guys were saying, they don't know, something's going on. Something's going on. So we kind of looked at it, and sure enough, when the riots kicked off, those were the gangs. Those were 7-4 Hoover groups that kicked that off in Florence and Normandy. So we had the riots, and the big report came out, about the LA riots. And if you go back in time, if you look at the original report, it said nothing about intelligence, nothing. Although I got interviewed by the committee, I spent 4 hours talking to the people that were doing the investigation, and they decided to withhold what we knew before the riots and what we didn't know. I thought that was interesting. But where else did we fail big time in my lifetime? 9/11. There was a failure of imagination was the final one. Okay. Failed to connect the dots. Okay. How about the summer of 2020? Okay, civil unrest. 50 major cities had major civil unrest after the George Floyd thing. Failure to anticipate it in your cities. Now that's happening in Milwaukee. It's not going to happen in Chicago. It's not going to happen in LA. Wrong. We failed to that. And then let's go January 6th. What does that report say? Was it a failure of intelligence? It was a failure to notify, failure to inform decision makers, stovepipe collection of the information, and failed to communicate. So I've witnessed 4 major failures in intelligence. And getting back to teaching, I think that ought to be taught more in it. I know we purposely had one class within a bigger context of 9/11 because our students weren't born yet at 9/11. So what is 9/11 all about? Why is that important? Okay, because when they hit the field, their bosses were there for 9/11. So don't be that analyst. Be prepared. Do your work. Be professional. Do it by the numbers. Do the right collection. Do the right reporting. Do the right communications up the chain of command. Okay, and don't be that analyst that gets blamed for some major failure.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. I think it seems to me with all 4 of those that you described there, failure of communication was relevant in all 4 of them.
Yes.
And I think it's really hard, especially for young analysts. And I'm not even going to put on young analysts. I mean, even probably at 49 years old, I might have trouble with this, is communicating this type of information is going to be really intimidating. The response you're instantly going to get, oh, well, that will never happen here. When I hear that, it's like, that's what the principal at Sandy Hook would have said every day up until the day of the school shooting. That will never happen here. So it'll never happen until it does.
And it will. It will.
Right.
I guarantee you, any analyst that's going to listen to this, if they haven't already gone through that, okay, they will at some point in time in their career. I mean, every major federal agency, they've had their crisis. And they were asked, why didn't you forecast this? So,
I mean, why didn't you have the response ready? Right. I mean, and we're using really big, large events here, but this could be anything from like bad traffic coming out of a sporting event is like, wait a minute, why weren't you ready for this? Right. If anything where there's going to be some big issue, even for that small community, and there is a breakdown in what the public sees as what should happen, you're going to have these types of questions.
I mean, it could be a natural disaster, a wildfire, or mudslides in California. You got to prepare for that.
Now, another thing that makes me think about this too is what I worry about with a lot of analysts is they're spread too thin. They're the jack of all trades. They have to focus on a variety of different tasks. They're not focused. They're not necessarily the subject matter experts. They may not be giving the time, resources to truly be in a position to make this decision, to do what we're expecting them to communicate in a situation like this. Because I think that when I said, like, even at 49, I might have trouble with that. I mean, you really have to be a student of whatever that topic is, I believe, in order to be confident to communicate what you need to communicate in these situations. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I worked with a guy who compared analysts to the medical field. And his concern was that the analytical field was becoming like the medical field. I can go to my lung guy, but don't ask him about the head cold I have. Okay, I can go to, this physician, but if it doesn't deal with my heart, he's not going to be able to talk to me about my liver. And we've got analysts out there who are only cyber, only telephone, only, and again, it's the old fox versus the hedgehog. Be a fox if you can, but I'm afraid analysis or the intel world is getting too pigeonholed into skill sets as opposed to general knowledge. I'm an expert on I2, but don't ask me about something else.
Yeah. And is there any time you want to be the hedgehog?
The hedgehog is the person that in a crisis the bosses go to for that topic. And yeah, I would like to be a subject matter expert on that topic, but on a day-to-day basis, no, that's boring. That's boring. I worked 7 years in homicide, and homicide got boring because gang-related murders were all the same. No witnesses, too many witnesses. A lot of shell casings, no shell casings. A lot of cooperative witnesses, no. And it just got boring after a while. The same thing I imagine in the intel world.
All right. All right. Very good. Well, hey, David, thank you so much for your time and perspective here today. This has been really great. Congratulations on your career, on your perspective, your 2 retirements, your plans for the future. I wish you all the best health moving forward and all your plans with your family. Our last segment to the show is Words to the World. This is where you can promote any idea that you wish. David, what are your words to the world?
Hopefully there's something of value in the last hour and a half that we've talked.
Yeah.
But I also want to finish with another topic. It's not going to be my time with LAPD. It's not going to be setting up training for NDIC. It's not going to be that I was the chair of the first intelligence program at a university. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but here's what my legacy is, and that is I've been married for 45 years to the same lady. 45 years. That's an accomplishment that I'm proud of. I've got 2 kids. One is a division chief in charge of analysis and production for the Space Force. And I got a son that's in Alaska teaching life skills to special needs students. I'm just proud of that. That's on my tombstone. That's what I'm going to be talking about. It's not going to be talking about NDIC or Mercyhurst or any of that. It's going to be the family. So I tell analysts, and this goes back to the time, wealth, and health triangle. Take care of your family. Take care of those outside interests, and make that your legacy, not your job. I mean, we all got replaced the day we left. We were replaced by somebody. Okay, but you can't be replaced for a father or mother or brother or sister. So that's good to know. I'm proud of that part of it. So stop waiting for the right time to do something. The time, health, finance triangle isn't an abstract theory. It's a real thing. And so for me, one doctor's appointment changed my whole perspective. Okay, so don't wait for the right time. Do it. Okay, just do it.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with, you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later.
Okay.
But I do appreciate you being on the show, David. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Okay, maybe we can do it in 3 years again. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.